Bullied teen calls 911 in class. What happened next will shock you. A story by Heartfelt Tales. It started with a scream that sliced through the silent classroom like a knife. Chairs screeched against the floor as every head turned toward the corner desk by the window, where Mia sat frozen, her long black hair wrapped cruelly around the fist of a boy twice her size. The teacher's chalk stopped mid-sentence on the blackboard. Time itself seemed to halt. For weeks, Mia had endured the whispered taunts, the mocking laughter, the cruel notes slipped into her locker. She was the quiet girl, the one who never raised her voice, never fought back. At 16, she had mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight, hiding behind her books, her hair, and her silence. But today was different. The morning had begun like any other tortuous day. Mia's alarm had buzzed at 6:30 a.m., and she'd stared at the ceiling for 10 full minutes, gathering the courage to face another day at Westfield High. Her mother had called from downstairs, cheerful, oblivious, asking if she wanted pancakes. Mia had forced a smile into her voice and declined, knowing that food would only sit like lead in her churning stomach. Walking through the school corridors felt like navigating a minefield. Every corner held potential humiliation, every classroom doorway a possible ambush of cruel words. She'd developed a sixth sense for avoiding Ethan Parker and his crew, timing her movements between classes, taking alternate routes, even hiding in bathroom stalls until the hallways cleared. But geography could only protect her for so long. The build-up to this moment had been methodical, relentless. It started with seemingly innocent comments about her appearance, her clothes, her hair, the way she walked. Then came the social media harassment, fake accounts created solely to send her hateful messages, unflattering photos taken without her consent and shared with mocking captions. Her lunch had been knocked from her hands more times than she could count. Her backpack had been accidentally kicked downstairs. Each incident was small enough to dismiss individually, but together they formed a suffocating web of torment. Mia's parents noticed her grades slipping, her appetite disappearing, the dark circles under her eyes growing deeper. When they'd asked what was wrong, she'd perfected the art of deflection. Just tired, she'd mumble, or school's stressful. How could she explain that she was drowning in plain sight? That every day felt like a battle just to exist? The isolation was perhaps the cruelest part. Watching her classmates laugh together, make plans, complain about normal teenage problems while she carried this crushing secret. She'd tried to tell herself that high school was temporary, that she just needed to survive until graduation. But survival was becoming harder each day. Ethan Parker, the ringleader of a group of notorious bullies, had decided to push things further than ever before. With a smirk, he yanked Mia's hair so hard that tears sprang to her eyes. The physical pain was sharp and immediate, but it was nothing compared to the emotional agony of being humiliated in front of 30 classmates who watched like spectators at a gladiatorial match. "Say something, mute girl," he jeered loudly, his friends laughing behind him. "Or are you just too scared to even squeak?" The laughter felt like acid poured over her wounds. These were the same people who sat near her in other classes, who borrowed pencils from her, who knew her name but had never bothered to see her humanity. In that moment, Mia felt the full weight of her invisibility, not the protective kind she'd cultivated, but the devastating kind that made her question her own worth. The class watched in stunned silence, some too frightened to intervene, others too accustomed to bullying being ignored. Mrs. Henderson, the English teacher, stood paralyzed by her own shock and uncertainty. Later, she would confess to feeling ashamed of her inaction, but in that moment, she was as frozen as everyone else. Mia's heart pounded in her chest so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. She felt the familiar urge to shrink, to do nothing, to absorb this humiliation as she had absorbed countless others. The voice in her head, the one that had been systematically broken down over months of abuse, whispered its usual refrain, *, you deserve this. You're nothing. Nobody cares about you, *. But beneath the fear, something stronger burned, a quiet, powerful resolve she'd been holding back for far too long. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something deeper, a fundamental recognition of her own humanity that refused to be extinguished. The realization hit her like lightning: I don't have to accept this. Mia slowly rose from her seat, her legs trembling but holding steady. The simple act of standing felt revolutionary. When was the last time she had claimed space like this? When had she last refused to make herself smaller? Let me go. Her voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. Each word was deliberate, carrying months of suppressed pain and newfound determination. The classroom, which moments before had been filled with nervous laughter, fell into complete silence. Ethan scoffed, pulling harder, expecting her to crumble as she always had. His smirk faltered slightly at her tone, but his pride wouldn't let him back down in front of his audience. "What are you gonna do about it, freak?" Instead of cowering, Mia reached into her bag with calm precision and pulled out her phone. Her hands were steady now, powered by a clarity she hadn't felt in months. As she dialed 911, she felt something shift inside her. The quiet girl was finding her voice, and it was stronger than she'd ever imagined. "Police?" she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Yes, I'm reporting an assault. I'm at Westfield High School, room 207. Please hurry." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The room erupted into shocked gasps. Some students pulled out their own phones, recording what they sensed was a pivotal moment. Others simply stared, unable to process what they were witnessing. Ethan's smirk faltered completely. You can't do that," he stammered, releasing her hair as if burned. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. The tables had turned so quickly he couldn't comprehend it. Mia didn't flinch. She pressed the call to speaker so everyone could hear. The dispatcher's professional, reassuring voice confirmed that officers were on their way. The sound of adult authority entering their teenage world changed everything. This wasn't a schoolyard scuffle anymore, this was real, with real consequences. The teacher, finally snapping out of her shock, tried to intervene. "Mia, maybe we can handle this internally." But Mia's calm, unwavering voice stopped her. "No. I've stayed quiet long enough. I'm not going to be another story of a kid suffering in silence." Those words carried the weight of every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every moment she'd spent questioning her own worth. They carried the weight of every other student who had suffered in silence, who had convinced themselves that enduring abuse was easier than fighting back. Minutes felt like hours, but Mia stood tall, refusing to retreat to her seat. She felt exposed and vulnerable, but also powerfully present in a way she hadn't experienced in years. When footsteps echoed in the hallway, announcing the arrival of 2 police officers, the entire corridor had gathered to watch through the classroom windows. The officers entered with professional authority, their presence immediately shifting the dynamic in the room. Ethan and his friends tried to laugh it off, their voices higher and more desperate than before. "It was just a joke, officer. She's being dramatic." But Mia looked them straight in the eye and said, "This isn't a joke when someone gets hurt. This is assault." Her voice carried a weight that surprised even her. She had found her power, and it was undeniable. The officers didn't hesitate. They questioned witnesses, took statements, and within 20 minutes, handcuffs clicked around Ethan's wrists. His friends were escorted out for questioning. The boys' faces, once full of arrogant grins, were now pale and terrified. The reality of consequences, real, legal consequences, had shattered their sense of invincibility. Mia didn't smile or gloat, she simply felt a weight lift off her chest for the first time in years. As she watched Ethan being led away, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months: safety. Not the false safety of hiding, but the genuine safety that comes from standing up for yourself and knowing that the world can be just. The aftermath wasn't easy. Some kids whispered that she had snitched, perpetuating the toxic culture that protected bullies and blamed victims. But for every whispered criticism, there were 3 quiet conversations with students who approached her to share their own experiences, to thank her for her courage, to ask for advice. Sarah Martinez, a sophomore who had been targeted for her accent, found the courage to report her harassers. David Chen, who had been physically intimidated for his academic success, finally told his parents what was happening. Emma Rodriguez, who had been body-shamed relentlessly, joined the school's peer support group. The ripple effects were profound. The school held emergency assemblies, new anti-bullying policies were enforced with real consequences, and teachers underwent mandatory training to recognize and respond immediately to harassment. But for Mia, the true victory was intensely personal. For the first time, she walked through the school halls without hunching her shoulders or hiding her face. She realized that speaking up didn't make her weak, it made her powerful. She had taught everyone a lesson that day: silence protects no one, but courage can change everything. Her relationship with her parents deepened as she finally shared what she had endured. Her mother cried, not just from sadness, but from pride at her daughter's strength. Her father, struggling with his own feelings of protectiveness and regret, became her fiercest advocate, working with the school board to implement systemic changes. Months later, Mia volunteered to speak at a school-wide assembly about bullying. Standing at the podium, she faced the same crowd that had once seen her as invisible. Her voice didn't shake as she said, "I was scared, just like many of you are. But fear is exactly what bullies want. The moment you decide you've had enough, you take back your power. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." The auditorium erupted in applause that lasted for minutes. Students stood, some wiping away tears, others nodding in recognition of their own struggles. Mia's story had become a beacon of hope, inspiring a school-wide cultural shift that prioritized kindness, intervention, and support. And as Mia walked off the stage, she knew that her journey from silence to strength was just beginning. She had learned that her voice, quiet though it might be, had the power to change the world, one brave word at a time. Remember that every quiet voice deserves to be heard, and every person deserves to feel safe and valued. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. If this story moved you, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you believe in standing up against bullying and spreading courage, please like, share, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more powerful, inspiring stories like this one. Together, we can turn pain into power and make sure every quiet voice is finally heard.